Resident Evil 1.5 was the early version of Resident Evil 2, which was abandoned in early 1997. As the game was approaching its March 1997 release date, the developers were dissatisfied with the resulting product. Rather than releasing a game that they were unhappy with, the developers took a risk of canceling the game and developing the game from scratch. In this version, there were quite a bit of key differences from the game that we ultimately got. So, in this video, we will be taking a look at these differences by fully explaining the story of Resident Evil 1.5. With that being said, let's get right into it. Leon's scenario included the characters Ada and Marvin just like the final product. However, these three characters had a few key changes which I will go over now. Leon's role in the game is a rookie police officer, much like in the retail version of the game. However, instead of arriving to Raccoon City on his first day, he is defending the Raccoon City police station when the outbreak occurs. While he was on the roof, the infected enter and compromise the interior. At some point, he was to escape into the sewers with Ada and Marvin. Marvin was Leon's supporting character. Like Leon, he was a police officer defending the station from hordes of zombies and other BOWs. Unlike in the final version, he was to play a much larger role and was supposed to escape into the sewers with both Leon and Ada. Ada Wong was another one of Leon's supporting characters. Her name was originally going to be Linda early in development of 1.5, but was eventually changed to Ada. Linda may have just been a working name for development purposes. Her role is similar to Ada's role in the finished game, a double agent spy working with Umbrella, which at the same time is sent to retrieve a sample of the G virus. She has the same mysterious and sassy personality as Ada in the finished product, except that in this game she was a scientist. Aside from Leon's scenario, there was also Elsa Walker's scenario, who was pretty much the equivalent to Claire. This scenario included Sherry Birkin, a police officer named Roy, and a character named John. Elsa's role was a college student returning to Raccoon City after a holiday. At some point, she joins up with John and Sherry where they plan their escape. Elsa soon became Claire Redfield in the finished product. John was one of Elsa's supporting characters. He is a civilian who seeks refuge in the police station and possibly locked himself up in a cell to protect himself from zombies, just like Ben in the final version. Now this character would later go on to be Robert Kendo, the gun store owner in Resident Evil 2. Roy was an RPD officer in 1.5. It is assumed that his role was similar to that of Marvin. Judging from the available footage, it seems he somehow had connections with the character John that we previously just mentioned. In the game, he is first found in a small room, wounded and infected, and gives Elsa keys to John's cell. After rescuing John and returning to Roy, Roy turns into a zombie after pleading with John to end his life. Roy is eventually shot and killed by John. Sherry Birkin was more or less the exact same in both versions. She was a supporting character for Elsa and would be pursued by William throughout the game. Annette Birkin, Chief Irons, and William Birkin were three characters that were involved in both Leon and Elsa's scenario. Based on early concept art, Annette was also supposed to be infected with the G virus and mutate like her husband before her, though it is currently unknown whether this was supposed to occur later in the game or if it is a concept that never made it past its artwork. Now, Chief Irons had the complete opposite role in 1.5. He was a supporting character who would aid in Leon's story and Elsa's later on. Both his office and character are a lot less morbid in 1.5, and it also appeared that he was wounded at some point in the game. William Birkin was slightly different in 1.5. After being infected with the G virus, Birkin wandered around the factory and encountered both Leon and Elsa, calling for Sherry. He eventually makes his way to the laboratory, much more mutated and vicious. Now let's talk about enemies. In the prototype, the zombies were significantly more gruesome and tougher, continuing to crawl towards the player even with their body below the waist severed. In this game, it was possible for a zombie to continue walking and attack the player even though its head was blasted off. However, once the zombie grabs the character, they would push it off and will immediately fall to the ground. In addition, the zombies were able to climb on and jump off ledges and get up from crawling, which wasn't featured in the final version. Crawling zombies that bite ankles were capable of crawling on top of the player and killing them with a neck bite. While not present in the final version, it did make its way into the remake of the final version. In Resident Evil 1.5, the appearance of the zombies were far more varied, including fat zombies and multiple female zombies. Crows and zombie dogs share pretty much the same role in both versions, with dogs attacking the player in outside areas. This version also included a different breed of dog, as seen by the German Shepherd zombie dogs that would attack the player in the RPD shooting range. The web spinners were supposed to hide in ventilation tunnels before attacking nearby enemies. William Birkin was to be far more monstrous, able to kill other infected creatures. William would also mention Sherry's name multiple times during his search for her. A giant alligator and small crocodiles were also featured in a huge tunnel area in the sewers, where a fight presumably were to take place. Two notable enemies in this version which never made it into the final version were the man spider and the infected gorillas. The Raccoon Police Station was originally conceived with a more modern look. In the release version, it was changed to being an old building refurbished by the police as a headquarters. To find examples of older buildings, the team snuck into a mansion in Japan to take photographs, deciding that it would be easier than flying to the United States and back. 1.5 is shown to have a wide range of weapons at Leon and Elza's disposal. Both Leon and Elza possessed a combat knife. The weapon had its own inventory slot, and if Leon or Elza didn't have a gun equipped, they would be able to draw it by pressing R1 plus square. Originally, Leon's starting handgun was to be the Browning HP, a weapon that was one of the RPD's standard sidearms. Elza's starting handgun was to be the Sig Sauer P228. She was going to acquire this weapon off a dead police officer. Additionally, both Leon and Elza were originally both set to have burst fire handguns later in the game. These two handguns were the Beretta 93R and the Glock 18, though it is unknown which guns would have gone to who. The Remington 870 could have been used by both Leon and Elza. Based on earlier footage, the shotgun model was to be full length, resembling like it did in the first game with a synthetic black stock and pump. The Spaz 12 was another shotgun that was intended to be used for both characters. It was fitted with a plastic stock, it shot in semi-automatic, and was more powerful than the Remington 870. Hand grenades were also set to be in the game, a weapon that was most likely exclusive to Leon as Elza had the grenade launcher. In addition, the grenade launcher was to have a standard stock rather than a pistol grip seen in the final version. Like the rounds in the grenade launcher, Leon was able to utilize frag, napalm, and acidic grenades. The M202 Flash was also set to make a return in the first game, and was to be used during the climactic fight showdown against William. The flamethrower was also a returning weapon that was available to Leon. The weapon did in fact make it to the final version, but it was found in a different area. A metal pipe was set to be a second melee weapon in the game, which had a longer range of attack and did more damage to enemies than a traditional combat knife. A Ruger Super Red Hawk was set to be the game's magnum and was a weapon available to both characters. The Mac 11 was to appear in the game, but its design in the final release was slightly different. The HK-51 was set to appear and was supposed to be the game's assault rifle that was used by both characters. It did more damage than the Mac 11 and was possibly to be unlocked after completion of the game, similar to the Gatling gun from the retail version of the game. Lastly, the Colt Python was set to make a return from the first game. The gun supposedly did more damage than the Super Red Hawk, which would have made it the second most powerful weapon in the game, right behind the rocket launcher. It is currently unknown how the player would obtain this weapon, though it is speculated that the player would have to complete the game under certain conditions. And there you have it, that is a summary of Resident Evil 1.5. Thanks for watching everyone, I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Peace.